appreciate folks listening. Want to give folks a chance to comment who wish to. We've got 15 minutes for this, so we're a little bit late. We're going to give the full 15 if you need it. So at first, to allocate time, how many people want to make a comment? 2, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 divided by 15 is roughly about 2.5 minutes each. So, so about 2.5 minutes each. Again, if you could comment specifically to the group as a whole, follow our ground rules as well as being constructive, not singling out people, no name calling, etc. And obviously, as much as you can focus your comments on these specific topics we talked about today, that's very helpful to this group, so we can stay focused on a complex topic in a specific way. So I'm just going to call people in order. I'll give you the 30-second, and I'll give you the okay, so gentlemen right here, you want to start? And just if you say your name and affiliation, if you have any, just so that. Yeah, we'll give you, if you want a mic.
I don't need a microphone.
Do you need one last time?
My name is David Darty. I'm here on 2 points. I'm the Alliance for Responsible Siting of Alternate Energy Installations. I'm also, I live in Situate next to a wind turbine. First of all, we're disappointed that we're not addressing infrasound because I wake up with headaches and ringing in the ears because of that. But with that said, on topics more germane to this, amplitude modulation. I disagree with Mr. Cody in that this thing doesn't exist and will exist in some situations. I can't believe that. Amplitude modulation must exist in all wind turbines because of the nature of the physical structure with the stanchion and the way that the blades turn around. I'm a little tired. I've been up most of the night. I went out on the first night of testing in Situate with Tech Environmental. I'm disappointed because the winds that were predicted died and we didn't have very good testing. But there was one situation, I had my own meter and I had it set for fast metering. Tech Environmental had the very expensive meter there and they were on slow, but they monitor everything. LEQ, LMAX, fast metering, slow metering, they got it all there. They were kind of cryptic and non-committal of what they found, but I was looking over his shoulder and I would get a little information out of them. There was one situation where the LEQ was, well, I have the numbers, but the LEQ was about 7.5, 8 dBA above the ambient background, the L90. And I saw it, I was watching the blades and the amplitude modulation came in because I hear the whoosh, whoosh, and my meter spiked about 3 or 4 dBA. And I said to Ryan Callahan, I said, did you get, after he'd stopped the meter, did you get that? He says, yeah. I said, you should add that on. He said, I can't do that. I said, if he added it on, we'd have non-compliance. He didn't say anything. So I'm really convinced that AM is an important part and that the current regulations don't accurately denote that amount that should be added on in some way, however you determine it, because it is the breaker. And that's the thing that disrupts you with that impulse. If it was one constant sound, you could probably learn to live with it. And it comes. It comes.
Thank you, sir. I think there's a quote right there.
I think we've heard a lot today about modeling being inaccurate. Today we've heard a lot about modeling being inaccurate for the wind turbines, and I also think it's important, whether or not that be true or not, to remind people that in Massachusetts, the protocol we were given to do modeling, to go through the permitting process, is different than the protocol now being followed by the DEP. So that does help change some of the numbers that we're talking about. It's hard to have modeled it one way and then be enforced on a different protocol. So that does help with some of the inaccuracies people might be thinking that they see. And then my other was a question to the organizers of the group, which is whether or not there's any opportunities for the entire group to travel together, to be out at the same night, hearing the same wind turbine and hearing the same thing. Because I think what we're hearing a lot of is that people observe wind turbines differently, and noise is going to impact different people different ways. So while it might really bother somebody, it might really not bother the person standing next to them. So that's just a thought. Thank you.
And again, the group as a whole won't respond, but if you look at the
Hi, Lauren Preston Wells. I'm on the Asheville Planning Board, which is out in Franklin County. A county not represented on this panel, though it has a lot going on with wind.
I'm from Franklin County,
True.
from Conway,
Yes.
so right next door.
You are. I guess a stakeholder who is particularly concerned about health issues being represented. And I just, from perhaps one of those sparsely populated areas, I just would really appreciate that when you're thinking about the spectrum of recommendations, that you are being protective and that what you're asking people does not mean that they lose their homes and their health, and really take that seriously, not just because there's only, you know, a handful of us who are really going to lose out. Thanks. Oh, and I would also recommend, there's just a lot of information on the Acoustic Ecology Institute website, and just looking over the 2012 report recently, seeing how they summarize different regulations from all around the world and the country, and how they present that is very interesting.
Can everyone hear me? My name's Andy Wells, and I've been interested in this topic since 2006. I've served on 2 town boards in the state of Massachusetts, specifically to come up with wind turbine bylaws. Once in the town of Eastham on the Cape, and out in western, more recently out in western Mass. And I've, you know, what I've noticed over time is just the incredible disconnect there seems to be between the actions that take place by people who study this on a local level and the thinking that seems to permeate state government officials. There's a huge disconnect, and it's worth pointing that out. I should also point out I have more than a strictly academic interest in this subject, because I became interested initially when the a proposal for 4 turbines about 700 feet from my house was introduced, and then later in Western Mass on the ridgeline next to me. I just want to make a couple of points. Number one, also I do believe that you would get more credibility if stakeholders who from Franklin County who actually represented, who were on boards. There have been several towns that have wrestled with this issue, had more than 20 meetings to come up with policies and proposals. I can tell you in Ashfield, a committee I was on recommended 32.5 decibels. To the representative from First Wind, that might sound exclusionary. There's a different word that people use in these towns. It's called protective. So I also like to point out that the acoustic profile in these towns is very low, and that I hope that, I don't know if you're going to talk about details more, but the proposal to allow a greater absolute sound level in rural areas and lesser in more settled residential areas just seems to defy logic to me. And I know that the proposal comes from Denmark, but the idea that comparing Denmark with an open countryside, probably a very different wind shear profile, very different character and dispersion of sound as opposed to the rocky or tree ridges of Western Mass, is not a good fit. And I think that, remember when the turbine impact study came out, at the same time there was a paper by Henrik Muller that said, and I quote, has an outdoor A-weighted sound pressure level of 44, there is a risk that a substantial part of the residents will be annoyed by low frequency noise, even indoors. And yet the turbine impact study says that Denmark's limits are in line with noise levels that the epidemiological studies connect with insignificant reports of noise. That there's just a disconnect there. So I hope that people can, on this committee, who haven't already, can actually go out and do what I did, which is visit with people from Ontario, from Australia, from Massachusetts, who actually live next to turbines, to broaden your perspective.
Hi, my name is Joe Hackler, and I'm a resident of Falmouth, Massachusetts, and I sat on the Wind Turbines Options Process Committee with Todd Drummey. I have no legal actions against the town of Falmouth regarding the Falmouth wind turbines. I did not oppose the development of the Notice wind turbine for 2 years prior to its development, and I support the development of these renewable energy projects. I live adjacent to a 10 kilowatt wind turbine. I worked until recently underneath a 100 kilowatt wind turbine, and it sort of mystifies me that there's so much effort being spent on characterizing the noise associated with these wind turbines and the state regulatory process, because it's pretty clear from our perspective in Falmouth that it really is a NIMBY issue, and that the NIMBYs, through time, have changed their rationalizations as to why the wind turbines are offensive. At first they sounded like jet engines, and then the noise measurements were done, and they were not like jet engines. Later on, it was about infrasound, and these things that are sort of immeasurable, that you can't really get a hold on, and now it's about the amplitude modulation. It really is actually about the fact that the folks do not want to see them in their backyards. And I have friends who live up there, next to the highway, this side and that side, and in the neighborhood, and many, many people find them not offensive whatsoever. And during the daytime, you can't hear them. They can't be heard. At nighttime, in certain conditions, they can be heard. So if you really do want to kill the development of renewable energy in wind turbines, you can set very, very exclusive standards about the development, and it will kill it. But it's about the not in my backyard syndrome. Thank you.
Thank you. Last comment here.
Yeah, hi.
Just if you could
I
use the
don't
mic.
need the microphone. Hi, Virginia Irvine.
Can you take the mic anyhow?
Yeah, I think something about a hard time hearing would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Virginia Irvine. I'm from Windwise, Massachusetts. We advocate for people that are impacted by the sound from wind turbines. And just comments on the agenda today that you talked about. First of all, I'm glad somebody brought up the tough study, and I'm glad that somebody's looking at it in more depth. I wanted people here to know that there's a study that was done in northern Berkshire County and Franklin County by McAllister, I think it is, college. They had a National Science Foundation grant, and they did studies around in the Midwest and then in Massachusetts. And the results of that study were very interesting, and I can give you the specific details if people would like to look at it. The second thing is, I hope that all the people on this committee have read the HUSAC, the Fairhaven, the Falmouth, and the Kingston reports. You should familiarize yourself with those reports that have been done. And of course, the DEP did the Falmouth and the Fairhaven report, and the HUSAC was done by a consultant from Vermont for Iberdrola. They are their own consultant. And the Kingston report was done by Mr. Batarian here. The last thing that I would like to point out is that you're talking about the 10 dBA policy, and I don't know why it's not being enforced. A lot of people in communities where non-compliance has been found don't understand why it hasn't been enforced, and why the DEP hasn't enforced it. The Board of Selectmen, I believe in Falmouth, turned them off at night. The Board of Health in Fairhaven originally voted to turn them off at night, and then now they're back on at night. And somebody was talking about boards of health struggling with this issue, and that's why I'm saying why hasn't the DEP stepped in? By regulation, they regulate this policy, and there's been exceedances. There's also exceedances in the HUSAC and exceedances in Kingston. Thank you.
All right, I think we want to announce the next date, and we obviously have a fair amount of work to do to get ready for the next one. We'll hopefully have some CDC data. We have some good issues that came up today around what Renee brought up and Stephen brought up, and we'll have to figure out how to sort out as we go forward in terms of some of this.
So September 17th, is our next meeting. Between now and then, actually pretty soon, we're gonna get you out this Zoomerang survey so we can just get your initial input on the measurement questions. We're gonna base it primarily on the questions that are in the discussion document that were given before the beginning of the process. We'll also give a chance for people to tell us about any data needs that they have, additional data needs, and data information that you want to offer to the group. And of course, other comments and opportunity for that. We'll get that out to everybody in advance of the meeting, the comments you all come up with on an anonymous basis. We'll also give them to DEP so that they can use that to hopefully come up with a little bit more refined starting point document for us to use for discussion. And if we can get that from DEP with enough time to again do another Zoomerang and get initial input on that, we will try to do that. So it's all going to sort of depend on how quickly we can get all this out to you. And we may want to do a little bit of additional conversation, probably might not happen between this meeting and the next, but at some point to really try to pull together what we heard from this meeting and see if we can maybe even get a subgroup to come together and think about, okay, what options might we propose for dealing with amplitude modulation or for dealing with this 10 decibel level limit. And we'll, of course, get this meeting summary out to you in draft prior to the next meeting as well.
And it might, I'm sorry, and it might be that, you know, just on the scheduling of the data about amplitude modulation, we might be hearing some things at the next meeting, so that might adjust a little bit of how we talk about things, right?
And it will make note, we note the work plan and the schedule overall,
Right.
still in the mix about discussing.
Quick question, you know, we talked about data, but anything that we're providing you is going on the WinTag website, so it should be considered publicly.
Right. You give it to us,
Okay.
we give it to you.
Well, that's not true. So far, what we have given to the group, anything coming from the meetings has gone on the website. We have not been posting all the other studies and papers that people have said, primarily because we weren't sure how many of those we were going to get. We made them available to the group, but we haven't necessarily put them on the website.
Is there a reason for that, Stacy?
Just because of the potential volume of information, and if we had 50, reports and whatever, I know just from when we did this in Falmouth, it became a little bit overwhelming, potentially for the group. We're happy to discuss that further and to put it on the website and make it more publicly available.
So I think, let me just be clear about two things. One is anything you send us like a public document, a document like that, even if we don't put it on the website, still can be FOIA'd, it's still public information. Two, I would say, is I think just to manage the sheer volume potentially, we generally try to, when you all want to distribute it, you be judicious, we'll try to do among the group. If it got to be much larger, I think what we suggest is people send us URLs or whatever, and we can develop a set of links. If people want people to be looking at stuff, we can do that versus the actual document. So, with that, we should probably wrap.
Yes. Thank you all again for your time and really great conversation, I think we had.
Yeah, I mean, what's with that?